Amazing. Our first pitch. What can I say? Amazing. There's no film about Canadian mining in Africa. It's quite something. Donc, on va rentrer dans notre panel. We'll start with our panel. Is there anyone spontaneously want to give a comment? There you go. Carrie.
First of all, I congratulate you for taking this on. It's an intensely important subject matter, and I'm a little bit curious about your story and how you're managing to tie in the nations, the representation of the villagers. Do you get close to these characters, and wondering whether you have participation from the Mining Association and Barrick Gold, and how successful you've been in approaching them?
Sure. Okay, that's a huge question. In terms of getting close to people, like I said in the pitch, I'm coming from a place of having a lot of contacts, and so when we went there, we were able to get into these communities, and we spent enough time there to go with local fixers. And even though it's not per se a character-based film, it's these mines through local eyes. So we definitely do get close to people, both men and women, living around these mines. Maybe I'll let Susie do the industry.
Yeah, just quickly, that's been a real challenge for us. We've met with Barrick Gold a couple of times here in Bay Street, actually not here, but in Toronto and Bay Street. We do have an interview with the Mining Association of Canada and a couple of other industry representatives, but we're really trying to bring out that side by talking to ethical investors and kind of the financial side of things, because industry, there's a lot of trust issues, I think, with industry and filmmakers, and it's been challenging to interview them. We're also in the process of trying to secure an interview with one of the other companies that we feature based in Vancouver.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Amit?
Congratulations also to you. So I'm really curious to understand how you're going to weave together the two sides as an organic story, is one thing, and also what is the duration of the film?
Okay, well, it's more than two sides. That's something we learned when we went there. It's much more complex. And so what we've done, we actually were quite challenged ourselves, because we thought we were going down this well-trodden path where there'd be mining companies, fighting communities. And although that was the case sometimes, at other times it was completely different, because people just wanted the mines. And so we've done this really by speaking with our characters, and also by using our own narration to bring up the deeper questions that we have as we trace our investments as they move from Canada to Africa and back again. So that's how we've handled the narrative. As for the length, we really want this to have a wide distribution. So our focus right now is on a 52-minute piece, because we would like it to be televised, because again, we want this to show up on TV screens across the continent so people know what's happening with their money.
Vas-y.
There's a film right now at RIDM that's talking a bit about that, Le RIDM, about the lawsuit of Barrick. So I'm just wondering about the legal side too. How are you going to work with that? And are you expecting, because I don't know, I saw the film, and if I'm thinking about it, I already know the school, the Barrick, So how can you get more of what we can see that everybody knows already?
Okay. Well, that's actually, it's a huge risk. It's a huge risk legally. As you've mentioned, actually, somebody encouraged us to take that out of the pitch, but that's definitely on our minds, because everybody who talks about these mining companies often run into legal problems. But to answer your question more directly, we're uncovering a pattern in this part of the world and on the African continent. So it's not simply about Barrick Gold. We do have two other companies that we're looking as well. And the big thing that we're trying to show is that these companies are doing, one of the big things, they're doing things in Africa that they would not do here, that they would not get away with here. So it's beyond just kind of that Barrick story, and it's looking at the real pattern of all the companies and how they're behaving over there. And Canadian companies they're over half of the foreign-owned companies in Africa are owned by Canadian companies. So it's huge how big they are over there.
Yeah, I have a two-part question. Firstly, about you really say this is for a Canadian audience and that you want to reach and engage the community. Can you speak a little bit more about how you're going to do that, and tell us what your plans
Okay, well, we're actually ordinary people. So, I mean, the way we're going to do that is by talking about our own stories as we start to uncover this stuff as it's happening and as we find out about this. So, we are taking it, we're not going to be characters in the film per se, and that the focus is going to be on us, but we are going to use our curiosity and our uncovering of the way the government supports these companies and how our pension plans go into these mining companies' pockets and so on as a vehicle.
So what do you want like the audience to do when you watch your film? Like, how you can engage on
Sure.
that side?
Well, there's been really, really vibrant different communities that have really kind of risen up to take action on these issues and lots of different facets. And so on one end of the spear, there's a lot of lawyers who are working to try and improve accountability of Canadian mining corporations operating abroad. There's also shareholder advocacy groups who work with pension plans and with collective finances, and that takes a lot of public pressure. And something that's really kind of shown in Canada over the years is that there is a movement towards this. There's been, part of the reason we're here is because there's so many people who have supported us and who have, voted for us and helped us. So there's that, and then there's also, of course, resistance movements and protests and so on. So what we're hoping to do through the Canadian segment is open up these possibilities for action and to show people that actually, in this case, it's not this big, vague, abstract issue. There's concrete things that we can do because we're investors. And so that's what we hope that this film will show.
That sounds great. I contacted work for a wonderful organization called Film Scraps, which, as you probably know, so I was connecting with those guys. And also I'd encourage you to people to in touch with Josh Fox from Gaslight. Because a lot of his technique of reaching out to communities around sort of backing is a great template to do outreach. So if you want to talk with him, we'll put you in touch.
That would be awesome.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. And
Lisanne,
Lisanne, do you have
tu as quelque chose?
Est-ce que tu as un petit commentaire pour nous?
Hello. I just wanted first to congratulate you for your courage, because it takes great courage to film in these conditions. People getting killed, and you as reporters can also be in danger. So that's very commendable. And I think the project should definitely get on Canadian television, both French and English side of Canada. For international, it may be more difficult. This will be considered very Canadian as a topic, but definitely for Canadians, they should see the film on TV because, as you say, we're all investors in these mining companies, whether we want it or not, for tax money, and if really they are killing these people, it's important that everyone knows about it.
I just want to add something.
Sure, go ahead. Sure, go ahead. One last comment.
I just want to say that your passion is amazing, and I want us to encourage you when you're finishing the film, because I'm sure you'll finish it with and without the prize today, because you've got so far already. Don't underestimate the art of the story and the organic parts that can be really, the parts will become really organic, because audiences can be moved by stories, but the story has to be strong by itself. So the passion is there, keep it of course, but also take a side, look also to make sure that the story works also just as a story. I just think it's important.
Thank you, Amit. And we're now going to open up to the audience. Somebody posted on Twitter they want a hat and rum, so you got to ask a question for it.
Meantime, I'm going to
Anybody
serve
else?
rum to our panelists because I think they're still kind of shy, so I'm going to serve them rum.
So we have a question.
No, you have to decide if my question is good or not. You know, I don't really know the answer to this question, therefore I'm asking you. I suspect that there's a reason why Canada is behind 75% of mining investment in Africa. My suspicion is that there are a lot of international investors that use Canada as a conduit to get to African mines. So I actually believe that this is more than a Canadian story, although we have our back mining companies. And I'm just wondering if you can comment on that, and because of that, if it is in fact the case, does it have legs beyond Canada?
Well, for the people that we spoke to, oftentimes some of the communities, especially in Zambia, were looking at more than one mine. So it's like, are you, with the French company or the Canadian company? So of course, for people on the ground, it doesn't really matter where we're from. And you're absolutely right. It's an issue that goes beyond Canada. The reason that we've decided to focus on Canada is because we pay our taxes here, and whether we like it or not, we are involved in this. And for us, it's a good entree point into understanding this broader system of mining finance. But the beginning part of your question touched absolutely on a key point, which is that investors, one of our corporations, well, not our corporations, but the corporations we look at, has an office in Australia as well, but they've listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange because that's where the finance comes in. And so basically what's happened is that the government has put in place conditions that really facilitate mining investment here, which means that strategically we also have a lot of weight in how this finance moves, which of course is behind this project for us.
Okay. Thank you. Does he deserve a shot of rum?
Woo! OK, maybe on a le temps peut-être pour un dernier commentaire très très vite. Voilà. Là-bas.
Une dernière question et après on passe au prochain.
On est généreux, ouais.
Et on va essayer de bouger le podium entre les deux projets. Si Jérémy peut nous donner un petit coup de main.
Is it really essential to limit the scope of the story so it being a Canadian story for a Canadian audience? I'm watching the story and it just seems like a very big story to begin with, and I'm wondering if centering it around the Canadian theme would limit the potential of the audience.
It might if we weren't Canada. And again, I'm going to keep on going back to this point. It is hugely significant that so many companies are headquartered here. It is hugely significant that almost half of all the foreign companies on the African continent are owned by Canadian listed companies. There is something serious going on here. And I think also to kind of tie into what some folks on the panel were saying, if we want to tie this into action, which we do, this is obviously sort of a big motivation of the film, is kind of affecting some kind of change. We simply need to focus our eyes on where kind of the most change can be impacted, and changing things like the Toronto Stock Exchange and who can list and how they can list things, changing things like Canadian federal regulation and legislation so that companies can't behave in certain ways outside of this country if they're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. These are all massive. We need to focus our efforts, and it's not like we're picking some little nothing on the side of the street. This is a huge player. It's arguably the biggest player in mining in the world. So our focus is unabashedly Canadian because we think that's where the action needs to be.
Okay, let's give it a hand of applause, and you can keep talking over drinks.
And a huge thank you to Diego. A huge thank you to Diego and Julia as well.